So now that we have a better understanding of things and how the Avada theme works to some extent, let's understand some Fusion Builder essential options and techniques. Now, we have what we think is a blank page. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, if I come down here, I don't have a header. I have everything set up by default. I don't want to do a background. I'm going to get rid of that for a second. And I'm simply going to hit update. Okay, now here's something very important that you want to comprehend and kind of get into your head. If I click preview changes right now, notice that that page had nothing on it, but I am going to see the footer. Now, why am I seeing the footer? Because the footer was set up by default in my general settings. We'll talk more about that in the next video. But I just want you to be aware of something, where information is coming from, so you're not miffed as to, oh, why does this happen? I didn't ask for that. So let's go back to that page again and examine what's happening. All right, so right now I have nothing in my content, nothing here. But if I scroll down, you will see that I have different information. So if I go to my footer, this is set up by default. This default option is what you're going to set when you go under here, theme options. We'll talk about that again in a subsequent video. But I just want to make this enjoyable for you. So if I was to come down here and I says, look, I don't want a widget area. I don't want copyright information. And I don't want footer width fine. We're going to keep that exactly how it is. So now you'll see you're just getting your Fusion Builder Essentials. Now, where is it getting this information from? Well, of course, it's getting information from the title of the page. So say as an example, if you're doing a parallax design or something with a background, there are occasions when you don't even want the page title in your post. Now, for SEO purposes, you certainly don't want to leave this blank because that's not good. So you want to give that some kind of intelligent name, but it doesn't mean that you have to actually see it. So based on these choices, if I come down here to page title, you will see what I can do with these options. So page title, I could say show bar and content, show content only, or hide. Page title bar, I want to hide. Page title bar text, I can hide or show that as well. Page title bar alignment, left, right, center. Okay, so just be prepared that these options are here, but you have to know where to look. Again, plain old simple English. If it was in Portuguese, I'd have a problem. Unless you speak Portuguese, then you're doing well. So if I go back up here to preview changes, I come here and I refresh my page, I basically have a blank page. The only reason you're seeing this is because I'm logged in as the admin, but as we talked about before, the way around that is I can come up here, I can update my changes, hold down the control key for Macintosh, right click for Windows, and open this up in a private or incognito window, and you're going to see diddly squat nothing because there's nothing on the page. So those are just different page options. Let's talk about the essentials. So let's understand something. So according to our visuals, according to our options right now, we're not inside of the Fusion Page Builder interface until I click right here. Once I click there, I'll have these different options. As an example, column options. How many columns do you want to have? Now, you're not married to anything because you can continue to add more columns step by step. Builder elements. What type of builder elements do you want to put in here? Now, of course, it would make sense to have columns first. I can do things like tabs and tagline and testimonials. These are, if you're familiar with Visual Composer, these are some of the same things you might find inside of Visual Composer. Custom templates. Well, I don't have any custom templates, but I can save as a layout. However, if I click right here, I can't make something out of blank. If I save this template, I can't save because I can't make something out of blank. I just got done saying that. Pre-built templates. Now, this is kind of interesting because pre-built templates is professionally designed, and all you're doing is filling in the blanks, similar to what we did in earlier videos, but this is for this particular page as opposed to an entire site. So if you don't want to get started with sample content from Avada, the Avada theme, then you can just start with a blank page and then just use one of their templates to replace information. So as an example, I'm going to pick Home 14, and it's going to replace any content that I have on the page. That's fine. Now, what we may consider doing at this point, because it takes a second for that to come up, if you scroll down here, it went and put all this content in there. Now, here's what I might suggest you do. I'm going to copy this into a new draft. And I would probably call this something that makes logical sense. Now, if you want to call it home version 2 or home version 3, knock yourself out. I'll just call this version 2. This way, if you want, you can have an original blank page to start with and then build upon that. Or you can use that as a template theme for your layout or design, depending on the type of site that you're working with. So if I go to theme builders, I can always go back to that blank page. Right? So let's do this again. Let's go into pre-built templates and let's just pick home, in this particular case, home 17. And it's going to say it's going to replace any content that's there. Fine, this action can't be reversed. Great, I get it. And hit OK. So now if I go and update those changes, because I just made changes, update the changes. Now here's what you have to focus on. Once I'm in my theme builder, that you can pretty much ignore the information not left behind. It's always going to default to your column options. Pre-built information, you can put more information in there, etc., etc. Now, we could go and save this as a template if in fact we wanted to do this, and then it would ask us the name of our template. Now, when naming templates, we'll talk about this in a separate chapter, but give it some kind of intuitive name that makes sense to you one step at a time. Of course, if I click here, it's going to delete the whole thing, so I don't want to do that. All right, so let's understand what we have so far. So I'm going to update that and preview changes. I'm going to close this window here and just preview changes. So just like that, I have a starting point for my new page. Now, keep in mind, I don't have any kind of navigation system. I don't have a header. I don't have a footer. I have nothing else. I just have my basic bread and butter information. Now, here's one of the cool parts again with working with this theme. You're looking at that and saying, look, I really don't like this at all. It's really horrible. Or maybe there's some elements that you want to keep. So what I can do is I can come back into here. I can go through my layout and I can see what I have here. And I can choose to either modify what I have or delete. So let's say I don't really want a Google map in there, so I'm going to get rid of that. I'm going to get rid of that Google map. The circle's fine. The testimonial's fine. This who you are information on the bottom, that kind of looks a little awkward there. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to get rid of this altogether. So therefore I can just run this across the page. See how flexible that is? Actually, what just happened there? There you go. Now it's a full width. So you can kind of mix and match as far as what you have, and then I can turn around and turn that as a template. These are very powerful ideas of just taking something that exists, because keep in mind this is a professional layout, and then you can just build upon that layout. Now again, if I come down here to my header, remember I didn't have a header display, so I want to say header yes, footer, let's put a footer in here, widget area, yes. So now if I come back up here, it'll probably look more like a page without that map sitting in there. So I'm going to come up here and update and preview changes. So now I should have a much better looking page than what I had before. And again, it was a couple of mouse clicks, but you have to understand what you're doing every step of the way. Actually, this up in here, I'm going to replace it with a header up on top. So let's go back to that again. And let's just put some information here on top. So I'm going to select Builder Elements. And based on these choices, let's put in a title. So I select Title, that inserts it into the layout. Close this window down. Now by default, it's going to put the title at the bottom. And since it's a title, it's probably not going to make a lot of sense to be at the bottom. So we'll take that and drag that to the top. As simple as pie. Sometimes if you don't have good mouse skills, you could kind of struggle with this. So I'll just take this and put this up on top, right below here. So now I'll go edit the title. Title size, different sizes here. H1 through H6, we'll make this an H1. alignment, we'll put this, we'll keep this to the left. Separator, we'll do a single separator, and separator color, just because we can, just so it stands out, we'll make it red. Pay no attention to my design skills. Right, title, what do you want it to say? Let's do a create, design, edit, publish. Learning how to spell sometimes helps, and save the changes. So if I update those changes and come up here to preview changes, I now have a new page with a header. Okay, now this is aligned to the left, so we need to make some further modifications here. So the way I fixed this is I simply went into my section here, into my element, and I gave more information to this originally was set up by default with a -30 margin and -30 at the bottom, which basically brought it up to the top, encroaching on top of the header. Now, for those of you that are new to this, understand something very important. Margin space and padding space. Padding space, imagine if there's an imaginary box over every single thing on your page, and this goes back to HTML as well and WordPress. Anything inside, so as an example, padding would be the distance between the 40 and this area and this area. This is known as padding. The distance between this element, or this div tag, if you want to look at it that way, if this is a div tag, and the next div tag, that's known as margin space. Margin space is outside of the element or object. Padding is inside. Now, you could have both, but it depends on what you're doing. So in this particular case, I solved that issue. Heading is just aligned to the left or aligned to the right. Now, if I want to align it to the right, I can just go back there and make those changes. But what I want to share with you is don't be intimidated by what you're doing. It's one step at a time. So if I go back into here one more time, let's cancel out of that. And I can scroll through here, and maybe there's something that I don't like that I want to change. Okay, maybe there's something, this circle counter. Maybe I want to put that someplace else. Maybe I don't want it at all, so I can turn around and trash it. Maybe I want a duplicate of this, so I can go ahead and duplicate that. And that's going to put it right at the bottom of this. So there's all different types of options and feature sets, but you just need to know your environment one step at a time. If you lose track of that, you're going to get very, very overwhelmed. So in this particular case, I have a third column testimonials, and if I was to hit the plus symbol here, well, then it's not going to work. You understand, the math is not going to work out. But let's say I wanted to do something like this. Let's say that I wanted to have a testimonial, my first testimonial across the page, and I want further testimonials on the bottom. So I can do something like this. I can make this full width to take up the entire width like that, and then I could do another one down here. So if I was to duplicate this, that's going to fill into that third. Does that make sense? Because the math works out that way. So I can have this as my main testimonial. Then maybe I want to have sub-testimonials at the bottom. So if I duplicate that, so I could duplicate that, duplicate this, and duplicate that. So maybe I want to surround this with a top testimonial followed by 3. So maybe this is a testimonial for a certain feature set, and these are 3 sub-testimonials. So I can come down here and do the same thing. So I can take this and make this out to be full width. And then just duplicate that. Now, of course, you would understand at this point that you'd have to change the content in here. But just let's take a gander as to what that looks like. Now, once again, before we go further, if you're going to experiment with different ideas, I can't overemphasize enough to make a copy of that and call it version 3, version 4, version 5. Those are just very powerful production techniques. So if I update the changes and preview the changes, you'll see what we have in our new Layout Fusion Builder Essentials. So in our next video, we'll talk about templates and how important it is to work with templates for the page templates. Stay tuned.